It's really interesting because a lot of people, I think, would not assume that there are watches being made just in people's garages.
The beauty of watchmaking is they're quite small, so you don't actually need that much space or that big of a workshop to actually make a watch. Hello, I'm Sam from Dawsey Watches, and today WatchGecko join me as I show them how I take raw billets of aluminium alloy and I turn them into unique timepieces like this, here in my home workshop, in my garage. My background in engineering started off designing and manufacturing components for motor racing, some of which are Formula One. In that sort of world, you can't fail, it mustn't fail, it has to work. I think some of that I've tried to carry that mindset over into the design and manufacture of my watches. But my love of watches probably started around about the age of 5. I remember going to a local jeweler's with my mum, spending my pocket money and buying a swatch. And I remember the salesman handing it to me and saying, "This is waterproof, you can wear it in the bath." And for a 5-year-old, that was just amazing. I've never tried to take inspiration from another watch brand or how it's typically done. The design and the construction of my watches is very much engineering led rather than what others have done. The way that goes together is sort of based on much older watches. The case is made from one piece of material, so the case back doesn't come off. It's a one-piece case, and that's the same for all of my models. And a lot of people that handle the watch and look at it, wear it, they don't realise that because it doesn't immediately look like it's a one-piece case, and they're always quite surprised. And then they start to ask questions. Well, how does it go together? And
Is there any particular benefit then to having a single piece case with the case back all integrated in a single piece of metal?
It makes the case a lot stiffer. It's better for water resistance in a way because it's just not another entry point that can get in through the case back. It does come with its challenges, certainly during assembly and also servicing, because you have to find different methods to disassemble the watch. So on the back of the watch, there's a pressure testing port that I use to pull a vacuum through the watch, which is also unusual. Usually if you pressure tested a watch, you put it in a chamber, pressurize it up. I don't do that, so I can pressure test mine dry without getting them wet by pulling a vacuum through all the potential leak points, hold a vacuum, and then watch for pressure decay. That's typically how you test things in the manufacturing world. Engine blocks, cylinder heads in engines. That's my pressure testing port, and it serves a second purpose. I don't use split stems, I use just one-piece stems. So that little screw also hides the stem release button on the movement. Because I knew I always wanted to do a one-piece case. That was what I wanted to do. Couldn't find any split stems. I didn't really even know about split stems then. My wife and I, before we had children, we went on a spa day somewhere. I just happened to be really relaxing at this spa. And that idea came to me. You have a pressure test port that I can also use as a dual purpose as the stem release.
Why is it so important to you that you make the parts yourselves? Because you could buy them in from a supplier, brand them yourself, design them yourself and do it that way. But why have you chosen to go down the route of making them yourself?
If I'm doing it myself, I can do exactly what I want. I don't have to rely on someone else to make something for me. There's a lot of skills that are being lost through time. By doing it myself, even on a small scale, I think hopefully it makes some difference to try and keep the skills, here in the UK. This is 6082 T6, which is a structural grade aluminium alloy. Very good corrosion resistance. It's used for bridges, scaffolding, it's used in aerospace applications, marine applications. So this is a watch for Ian in America. So that's his billet of material. That will become his watch case. Ian's case here is going to America. He's chosen the brass alloy, and that's in a very much raw state. It looks quite, it's not particularly shiny, but when it's done, it completely changes its colour. The cases and the dials, I'm machining, but then hand finishing the case and the dial. So the vertical lines, the sort of linen, I suppose, sort of finish you can kind of see on the dial is all achieved by hand. So this is 30-year-old Denford Star Mill, which is a British-made milling machine. As you can see, it's quite compact, and Denford made these as educational machines, typically to go into colleges and schools. So they're really solid. They're built really well because they're designed for students to crash them, basically. So that billet of material there is going to become that case. Green Rizzler, that's a cigarette paper. And the reason we use these is because they're very consistently made. And I know, without measuring that is 30 microns thick, which is 0.03 of a millimetre. When I can't move that paper anymore, my tool is exactly 30 microns. So starting off there by facing the job off so I know I've got a perfectly flat surface. And from there, then I start off by doing the circular pockets, that the movement goes in, that the crystal and the dial go in. So it's very important the fit of the crystal into the case is very good. And to fit it, we have to use a special tool. And then as you tighten that, it compresses the crystal ever so slightly. And you have to choose the right size crystal, and you have to design and make the recess that the crystal goes into so it's the right fit for the specification of the crystal. My stock of movements from, well, these are Japanese Seiko movements, which I have pretty good results with, and also supply watches with Swiss-made Sellita SW200 movements. This is one I usually take to a show with me because it's just kind of interesting to see how the dial goes together. So typically in a watch dial, the feet, which are these little pins here, they're called feet. Usually they would be soldered on or brazed on, but unusually my approach is to basically make the dial from one piece of material, which is quite a tricky thing to do because, you know, all the material that was here has to be removed all the way down to this surface just to leave these two tiny little pins. So there's two different types of hands. We've got these ones here, sort of black on the centre, but then with white loom. So that's one set of hands I use. For the smaller models, I use a slightly different set of hands because it's a smaller dial, it's a smaller crystal, it's a smaller case. A kind of mill sub inspired hands, still quite sort of geometrical in their design, and still got the broad arrow on the second hand there, which if the customer chooses a Swiss movement, they don't get that hand. So only the Japanese movements have this hand fitted. Hour and minute hands are the same, but the second hand are different, as you can see there. The Swiss movement doesn't have the arrow at the end of the hand. This is the first watch I designed, and the shape of it came to be because that's all I could really do with the machines I had at the time. So this doesn't have the additional chamfers, the little edges to remove the sharp edges, because I didn't have a way of doing it. I couldn't reasonably machine into that corner by hand. And if you look on the machine, you can just sort of see the machined finish. You know, it's quite obvious there, which is exactly what I wanted really. I wanted to show the handmade nature of it. I bought this lathe. It's a combination lathe and mill all in one, and just was playing around with it for a long time. And used this to create my first ever watch, which is the one I showed you upstairs. It took a long time because you're on the handles for hours and hours basically. And there's still some things I do make this way. Depends what I'm doing. If somebody wants something a bit different, I might do something on here. So this watch here, as you can see, is smaller. It's reduced in size. So that's 40 millimeters. This is 36. And that was made at the request of a repeat customer who wanted a ladies' watch. So this watch was designed at the request of a customer who wanted something with a square case. So it's quite an extreme design. It's 49 millimeters across the corners. So that sounds quite big. 49 millimeters that way, but it's actually only 39 across the width. So even though it's big and chunky, it does wear quite small. All of my designs have these sort of quite hefty chamfers on the back there, which really does help when you're wearing it to just make it comfortable. Looks a bit Bell and Ross, that wasn't the intention. It's just kind of how it ended up. So this is my field watch, I suppose you could call it. This is probably my personal favourite model. I wanted something round, so that's what I came up with. So it's got, you know, same sort of design language as the original model, just rounded with a different dial. So this was my take on a diver's style watch. I've tried to keep the same design language going with when I came up with these octagonal markers. So the diver's watch has got octagonal markers on it. It's my take on a fixed diver, is what I'm calling it. So it's got a fixed bezel, and most importantly, it's got fixed lugs. So you can see it's designed specifically for NATO straps or single pass straps. There was a customer who had a background, I think, in the Navy or something like that, and he wanted a vintage submarine depth gauge inspired watch. So that's what this dial is here. So this is, the markers around the outside represent the depth in feet, what would be the keel depth of a submarine, and the segmented section there with the skull and crossbones, a bit morbid. That represents the crush depth. It's basically the same case, but instead of the numerals around the bezel, it's got just round markers, and it doesn't have the fluting on the outside of the bezel.
But the other thing that I wanted to touch on as well is that this is a true family brand, isn't it? Because the names on the dial have quite a lot of significance. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, they do. In fact, that's not something I've ever really talked about. So I've got 2 children. I've got a 4-year-old son and a 7-month-old son. My 4-year-old, one of his middle names is Dawsey. So that's where the name came from. So when I first made a prototype, long before I started selling watches, just trying to think of a name, and that was the first thing that came to mind. So Dawsey is on the dial. And then when my second born came along, it seemed a shame, to not somehow incorporate him in some way. One of his middle names is Sulian. It's the Welsh version of Julian, and it means son born. He was born in the summer, so that was quite fitting for him. Wife's family are Welsh, so he's half Welsh, so that seemed a good fit. So I decided to use the Sulian name whenever I do a gold dial, a brass alloy dial, because it's bright, it's like the sun. So there you go. This is a supercharger off a BMW Mini. So the more modern Mini, the 1.6 petrol. Started off as a 1275cc, but it's at a 20 thou overbore, so it's 1293 cc's now. Different camshaft, lightened flywheel, different clutch, straight cut gearbox. Yeah, 164 horsepower, which for a car that weighs less than half a tonne, it's pretty good, actually. It's pretty good, yeah. It's got 2 seats. It's bucket seats and roll cage. So it's not very family friendly anymore, but my youngest son loves looking at it. So if I got rid of it, I'd feel sad about that, I think, and maybe one day he'll drive it. Fascinating to hear how your engineering mind works slightly differently to, say, someone that's in a marketing team or a luxury industry. It's a different approach, and we really like it, so thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for coming.